I like faces. I draw faces, and I love terracotta. I like things from just scenes in the house. I don't like to travel a lot. I like to be in one place that I'm comfortable in. And so most of my stuff just comes from right where I am. There's people sitting around drinking coffee or tea, or I just started doing a series of empty rooms, because that's part of what we see and where we are every day too. I had one class in high school that it was just, they gave me a ball of clay and said, make something. And that was fun. And that must have been my junior or senior year in high school. I don't really know what I did in college, but I did basic design and I guess a little bit of drawing and some watercolors. When I got out of college, I wanted to do clay work again. I didn't have any money or a place to work, really. So what I did was, I just figured I'd always been interested in Southwest American Indian pottery. I just think it's beautiful. So I figured if they could do it without big studios, maybe I could figure it. And so I started going to local brickyards, one in Epping and one in Gonnock, New Hampshire. And I just took my shovel and my wire clay cutter and filled up plastic bags full of clay till the little Honda Civic couldn't hold anymore. And drove home, and I used it straight out of the bag. I didn't process it. It was beautiful, clear, blue-gray clay. And I had a kick wheel in a barn and started making stuff. And then I had to fire it. I started using wood as a fuel. And then, and that was a lot of work. You have to just keep this fire going forever to get a good hot fire. So there's a lot of farms around here. And I went and picked up, in the summertime, cow manure. And at the time I was living in a place where there was a big barn, so I could take all these cow flops and dry them out all over the barn floor. And then I realized with the cow manure, it's faster, there's less smoke, less breakage. I went from about a 90% breakage to breaking hardly any. So I start by just slicing it with my wire and making it into a rectangle. That way I get the shape I want when I roll it out. I tend to have in my mind what I want to do. That way I'll make my slabs long and skinny or short and fat or whatever. And I don't wedge clay. Most potters wedge clay. When I roll it out, pretty much the air bubbles come out. At that same time I was doing the pit-fired pot, I had a really great studio space up over, there was a two-car garage, and I had the space above it for a studio. And every Friday afternoon for about 4 years, a group of us from Warner met in my studio and we did figure drawings. So I had a backlog of figure drawings. And then when Sadie was born, it was kind of difficult to go out and dig all this clay and hang out with fires, and so I flattened the clay out and drew pictures on it. It sets up for a couple of days, and then I just begin, I just cut it with, I have a nice sharp fettling knife. It's an old one, and I don't think I can even get another one like that, so I don't let anybody touch them. And cut it with that, and then it has to set up, and I burnish it with a stone several times as it dries, and that's what gives it the shine. Right after I got out of college, I was married at the time, and we went to Kenya for a year. And the women in the village I was in knew that I was interested in pottery, and so they took me to a firing that some women were doing. was mostly grasses they were firing with because that's what they had. And there was just enormous amounts of probably moisture, but a clear, not a dirty smoke, but a beautiful gray, dense smoke. And this one woman stepped out of the smoke and handed me a stone, a burnishing stone. I had never used a burnishing stone. I didn't know what they were all about. And so I thanked her. And she then stepped back, walked back into the smoke, and I was watching her as she disappeared through the smoke. And then the smoke opened up into a circle. And this woman stood in the circle and was looking back at me. And then poof, the smoke closed in again. And I used that stone on almost every piece I made today. So I've gotten other stones because I've worn that one down so much that I don't want to ever lose it. And then when I've got the shape and the consistency that I want, I'll put my drawing on it. I'll sketch it quickly with a very soft number 9 pencil. If I had softer pencils, I'd buy them, but I haven't found any. And then I just, it's just a plain old pin tool, one of the most ordinary pottery tools there is. Put my drawing in. When you only have a few lines on a piece, it doesn't take much to make it look not right. The mouth was really different a while ago than what I do now. I'm more aware of the mouths now. I really think that a mouth is it's only 2 little lines. You gotta get it where you want it. When I get a face on there or something that's just right the first time I draw it on, I love it. Because a lot of times I have to take my stone and rub the line out and fuss with it, and when it comes out just right the first time, it's great. And then it has to just dry really slowly. Oh, I score the back so that I can glue it better, and I think it helps keep it a little flatter. Then I turn them over and over while they're drying. I don't put weights on them, and a lot of them warp, and sometimes it gets in the way, and most of the time it's just part of it. So when it's dry, then I put some, I want the lines to be black, so I put some oxides and stuff in the lines, and then I fire it in the bisque. So then when it's done with the bisque, I've got a piece of clay that I can handle because it's strong enough that the dried clay is so fragile, I handle it just incredibly carefully because it chips, it breaks, it just falls apart. But after it's bisqued, it's pretty sturdy, and I just color it. I use commercial glazes, sort of like just getting a tube of paint and squirting it out and using it straight out of the tube, but I mix them up. And the parts that's tedious about the glazing is having to keep the terracotta. I don't want any glaze on it because I like just the color of the clay. So I have to paint around each piece that's going to be clay. It's tedious, but the results are well worth it. It just takes a long time. It may depend on the day which part I like best. Sometimes I like, each part is satisfying in its own way. I really like it when the whole studio is just filled with, every surface has a nice clean piece of clay just drying on it. That's very satisfying. But then there's a lot of work to go through, so that doesn't last very long. But again, I like seeing the clay part. I like it when I have made a whole batch of lamps, and the whole table is filled with just burnished terracotta. There's something very satisfying about just the clay that has just the polish on it and nothing else. Once I start working, I like to finish a batch. I don't like to have scraggly pieces of clay that are drying out and have to worry about those. So it's satisfying when all the things that I rolled out in that batch are cut into the shapes I want. And then it's satisfying again when all of those have the drawing on them. It keeps you going because I don't take one piece and have to finish one thing all at once. So it's nice when then I open up the kiln and okay, now my job the next couple of weeks is going to be painting. So at the end of each step there's a bit of satisfaction. Well, putting the glaze on, now that's a pretty, that's a tedious job. And I fortunately have a couple of friends who sometimes come and help me do it, so it's very social and fun. Mostly I do it by myself, but that's the only part of my work that is social. So I like it for that. And I have another friend who helps me make the wood backs, because that takes forever. It takes him less time than it takes me. And that's wonderful. I'll look back and say, wow, I did really thick necks back then. Or all those women have giant arms. The bathroom series that I do came from the woman who was going to model for us said she couldn't do it because she didn't have a sitter. So she said, well, if you want to, you could come to my house. So we went to her house and she modeled in her bathroom. And that's my oval tile series. That's where they came from. Other things, they tend to just, I don't know, they just come along. I love leaves. Well, just in my yard, there's incredible leaves. The sassafras. And I think they're my most favorite leaf because of the 3 separate kinds of leaves on one tree. And plus, they're just so beautiful. But other drawings come from, I don't know. I mean, there's my dog and my cat. Well, nobody really lounges. Naked ladies don't lounge around here, so that comes from the models. So I've done a series of War is Not the Answer tiles, and just a lot of my pieces have doves in them. Of course, my studio's filled with ratty pieces of paper where I sketch everything out 100 times, and then I like some of the drawings and keep them and never use them again, but it's always good to have stuff around. And so I have lots of stuff around, and when I have to clean up my studio, it's terrible. I can hardly think because my stuff isn't there. I sometimes think about doing something else, and I don't know what else I'd do. So I'll probably do this.